Okay, we'll call this special council meeting on Tuesday, January 28th at 7 p.m. Clerk, call the roll, please.
Mr. Lawson?
Here.
Mr. Booth?
Present.
Mr. Clement?
Here.
Ms. Sonic? Here. Mr. Duffy?
Here.
Mr. Flowers?
Here.
Mr. Taylor?
Here. Okay, we have 3 ordinances on the agenda for first reading. First one is 325.
I'll introduce it. Yes.
An ordinance that City of Nelsonville will pick up the statutorily required contribution to the Ohio Public Employees Retirement System for the city attorney pursuant to Internal Revenue Code section 414H2 and declaring an emergency. Whereas pursuant to federal and Ohio law, the City of Nelsonville, Ohio may offset future salary increases and pick up or assume and pay the contributions statutorily required by such elected officials and covered employees to the Ohio Public Employees Retirement System, or OPERS, and such individuals will not be required to pay federal and state income taxes on such contributions. Now therefore be it ordained by the Council of the City of Nelsonville, Athens County, Ohio as follows. Effective February 1st, 2025, the full amount of the statutorily required employee contributions to OPERS shall be picked up and paid as a fringe benefit by the City of Nelsonville for each person within any of the classes established in Section 2 herein. The pickup shall be an offset against future salary increases. This pickup by the City of Nelsonville shall be designated as public employee contributions and shall be in lieu of contributions to OPERS by each person within any of the classes established in Section 2 herein. No person subject to this pickup shall have the option of choosing to receive the statutorily required contributions to OPERS directly instead of having it picked up by the City of Nelsonville, or of being excluded from the pickup. The City of Nelsonville shall, in reporting and making remittance to OPERS, report that the public employee's contribution for each person subject to this pickup has been made as provided by the statute. Therefore, contributions, although designated as employee contributions, are employer paid, and employees do not have the option to receive the contributions directly. All contributions are paid by the employer directly to the plan. The pickup by the City of Nelsonville, Ohio, provided by this ordinance shall apply to the city attorney employed by the City of Nelsonville, Ohio, who is or became a contributing member of OPERS. Under the fringe benefit method of employer pickup, salary is not modified. However, the employer will pay the employee's statutorily required contribution to OPERS. The treasurer and or the clerk are hereby authorized and directed to implement the provisions of this ordinance, to institute the pickup of the statutorily required contributions to OPERS for those persons reflected in Section 2 herein, so as to enable them to have their employee contributions paid by their employer. City Council finds this ordinance was adopted in a meeting open to the public as required by applicable law. 5 members of council voting to dispense with the 2 readings of this ordinance. The rules are hereby suspended for this ordinance, and this ordinance is hereby enacted on first reading to ORC 731.15 and Nelsonville City Charter Section 4.09 through 4.11. This ordinance is hereby passed as an emergency measure pursuant to ORC 731.30, Article 4, Sections 4.09 through 4.11, as an emergency in the operation of the city government, because the salary pickup commences on February 1st, 2025, and is necessary for the immediate preservation of the public peace, health, safety, morals, or welfare of the city, and this ordinance shall be in full force and effect upon its adoption. Will be enacted by council on first reading the 28th day of January.
Motion to suspend the rules.
So moved. Second.
Mr. Booth?
Yes.
Mr. Clement?
Yes.
Ms. Sonic?
Yes.
Mr. Duffy?
Yes.
Mr. Flowers?
Yes.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Mr. Lawson?
Yes. Motion to adopt.
Second.
Any council discussion on adoption? Clerk call the roll.
Ms. Sonic?
Yes.
Mr. Duffy?
Yes.
Mr. Flower?
I don't understand it. It's retirement by the OPER system. And then the city is going to pick up, and this right here. It says to pick up by the city of Nelsonville provided by this ordinance shall apply to the city attorney. It's not 1, 2, it's a retirement, we're gonna pay it retirement. Yes. Yes. Okay, yes.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Mr. Lawson?
Yes.
Mr. Booth?
Yes.
Ordinance 325 passes. Ordinance 425, if someone would like to introduce it.
Michelle? Oh,
That's you, Nancy.
An ordinance adopting a map board for the city of Nelsonville and declaring an emergency. Whereas under the general plan of the statutory form of government provided for in the Ohio Revised Code, the council of a city includes 7 seats, 4 of which are selected based on wards and 3 of which are selected at large. Whereas Nelsonville does not currently have wards. Whereas the Athens County Board of Elections has indicated a ward map is required to be enforced in order for the Athens County Board of Elections to accept the petition for a candidate running for one of the 4 ward council seats. Whereas the deadline for partisan primary candidate petitions is to be submitted to the Athens County Board of Elections is February 5th, 2025. Whereas litigation regarding the procedures relating to change of form of government is currently pending before the Ohio Supreme Court. Now therefore be it ordained by the council of the city of Nelsonville, Athens County, Ohio as follows. The council hereby adopts the map attached hereto as Exhibit A to be the ward map for the city of Nelsonville. This ward map shall apply to the 2025 municipal primary election. In the event the Ohio Supreme Court exercises jurisdiction and takes the case currently pending before it, the map in Exhibit A shall not apply to the 2025 municipal primary election. City Council hereby finds that this ordinance was adopted in a meeting open to the public as required by applicable law. 5 members of council voting to dispense with the 2 readings of this ordinance. The rules are hereby suspended for this ordinance, and this ordinance is hereby enacted on first reading to ORC 731.15 and the Nelsonville City Charter, sections 4.09 through 4.11. This ordinance is hereby passed as an emergency measure pursuant to ORC 731.30, Article 4, Section 4.09 through 4.11, as an emergency in the operation of the city government, because the February 5th, 2025 deadline for the 2025 municipal primary election is imminent and is necessary for the immediate preservation of the public peace, health, safety, morals, or welfare of the city, and this ordinance shall be in full force and effect upon its adoption. Duly enacted by council on first reading the 28th day of January, 2025.
Motion to suspend the rules.
So moved. Second.
Mr. Duffy?
Yes.
Mr. Flowers?
No.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Mr. Lawson?
Yes.
Mr. Booth?
Yes.
Mr. Clement?
Yes.
Son?
yes.
Motion to adopt.
So moved. Second.
Second. Council discussion?
Yes, Mr. President, I'd like to discuss this because I don't think that council has the authority to create wards based on the charter. The charter doesn't give us the authority to create wards, but we can have the discussion. Maybe we can have Mr. Rowe chime in on this, but I don't think the charter gives us the authority to do this, unfortunately, based on our.
If I may, Mr. President. A couple of, I would say, kind of serious concerns that I have about this proposal, I mean, it's written in the text that, hey, there's the issue with the Board of Elections. I think that issue is solvable. I think Mr. Taylor raises a very good point about, hey, if there's nothing in, remember, the charter's not dead yet, it's still correct. The city's constitution. There's nothing in the charter that says council can provide or establish boards. So that, I think that's the point that you're articulating. That's certainly a concern because if council doesn't have authority, it can't lawfully act. The other issue, and we have several representatives from the state and local League of Women Voters in attendance, and they have graciously, and I don't want to speak, put words in their mouth, but they graciously reached out to me on this specific issue with the concern that, hey, the Exhibit A map, which is basically the Board of Elections precincts, does not meet the statutory requirement for substantial equality in population across wards. If I understand correctly, for example, I forget which one ward has like 1,700 and another ward has 700. That's not substantially equal, to say the least, if I can remember my 6th grade math. I think that's a very significant problem because if council were to pass wards, it would have to do so in compliance with the law, including that substantial equality. I don't know if you have any comments on that issue. If you
Is there any more council discussion before we have these folks maybe give us an opinion of?
sure, that's okay. Yes.
I understood from last night that the precincts and the wards could not, the precincts couldn't dictate what the wards would be because of what you just said. Well, I looked at the Board of Elections results on the precincts that we have, and I have them here, and they were even almost. The amount of Republicans, the amount of Democrats, and the amount of independent voters were like almost even, with the exception of one, which was Ward 3, was a little out of whack, but the other 3 were pretty even. So if you're talking about that as far as being able to determine what wards are being out of balance, on the Board of Elections, it's not out of balance.
But it's not based on,
But that's what we were talking about on the precincts.
yeah, but precincts, I mean, what you're talking about though is you're talking about parties. It has nothing to do with party, but it has to do with population.
Right.
It has to, so in your neighborhood, if you've got 1,000 people living in your neighborhood and I only got 500 living in mine, that's what it's going by, not based on who they select as who they want to vote for as far as the party. It's based on the population, and they have to be within a certain percentage, of close. So you got to have them roughly, if we've got 5,000 people that live in the city and we only have 4 wards, you take 5,000 pretty much divided by 4 basically. It's always going to be off a little bit based on people moving in, out from one ward to another, but not based on the political party, just based on population in general, just who votes.
Well, I thought we talked about the precincts though. That's why I looked this up. The precincts meaning the people that voted in those precincts for wards.
Yeah, but I don't think the precincts are based on political party either. I think they're based, I don't know how the Board of Elections.
Well, that's what they were here. I mean, they were based on the nonpartisans had more than all of the.
So, but you're showing results from those precincts.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, but you're not showing how the Board of Elections came up with those precincts though, right? How they determined those precincts.
Chief Oliver has input.
Is that based on voter turnout?
Yeah.
Population, so there could be a difference.
Yeah, voter turnout.
Okay.
Yeah.
So turnout, number of people that turn out.
Yeah.
Which could be different from the population in the precinct.
Right. But I thought the wards were drawn for political purposes.
No, you're talking about gerrymandering. That's
Yeah.
completely different.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm sorry. Okay, so if, I just wanted to get council discussion before we have, because they're going to be much more knowledgeable on this than we are, so.
Sure. One other concern is just a timing issue. I think if you strict reading of the revised code would have said, hey, wards have to be in place 150 days prior to the primary election.
Primary. Oh, whoops,
Right.
that's not gonna happen.
Well, no, because that date would have been December 7th. Which would have required
Research.
council to act, well, would have required the wards to have been drawn 5 days after the election results were certified, which is obviously not sufficient amount of time to conduct a task as complex as drawing wards.
Well, thank you,
There
Mr.
is.
Reyes, appreciate it.
So my question is the wards that they're referring to as for 1994, because we've had 3 censuses since then, they're null and void, correct? Because
I think that-
of the possibility it could change.
Because there's been, since the 90s, early 90s, there's been a fairly substantial population shift within the city.
Right, well, we went in 1994, this is 2025, it's actually 31 years.
Yes.
So and we've had 3 censuses since then, where the population in the Nelsonville hasn't been determined to change.
Well, and that's a good point, Mr. Wolf. There's an additional complexity, and I was the one who actually noticed this also, so I can't take credit for this, but recall after the last census, there was that special state procedure census recount to ensure that the city actually maintained the 5,000 in population. So what's interesting about our situation here is actually, do we go with the federal numbers or do we go with that state recount number for drawing wards? I honestly, at this point in time, don't know the answer to that question, but that's a very astute question. But
Because, I mean,
complicates this.
According to the last census, federally, we were down individuals. So the wards don't show that decline as far as the wards being drawn up and everything. So in order for, I guess this election to go forward, we'd have to have the new wards in, correct?
That's the information that's been communicated to me from the Board of Elections. I'm wondering if maybe the solution to that is, hey, if everyone runs at large rather than based off of wards, does that solve the problem?
But is that following the statutory rules that they want to put in place?
That's a good question. I don't think the answer is immediately definitive and obvious.
I think that's where we get into that problem with the way it was unclear on the ballot. It states as if it goes back to the way it was, which would be wards, unfortunately. So that I think that creates muddies the water, I think, to your question there. But I think that running at large would be a possible solution.
But wouldn't that basically make the intent of what they want as far as you run in your ward and get elected through the people out of your ward, but now because you're running as basically an independent or at large, now anybody from any ward can vote.
So I think I don't know if this thinking is necessarily the best thinking, but at least it's kind of how I've been trying to process this. If you have wards with a significant disparity or imbalance of population, that effectively dilutes the votes in wards that have much higher population. And remember, in our country, the right to vote is sacred and sacrosanct. And that's one reason why the law has these requirements for substantial equality, is so that we ensure, hey, one person, one vote, we're not diluting it. I think someone had raised the concept of gerrymandering. That's kind of the consequence of gerrymandering, is basically politically incentivized distortions on the right to vote of voters. And again, that's not something that that, our law contemplates as appropriate, precisely because the right to vote is such an important right, and, people fought and died to secure that right to us.
Well, thank you.
Any other council, comments?
If there are none, I would actually be interested in,
That's-
our guest
Yes,
opinions. and
absolutely.
Their thoughts.
Floor is yours.
Yeah, this one up there. I'm sorry, it's a mess right there.
Oh, it's quite all right, thank you. So I did prepare something, so I did bring copies for folks, if you'd like those. I'll just go through it really
Absolutely.
quick, if that's all right.
It works.
And then I'm more than happy to answer questions.
Why don't you introduce yourself, Trevor?
Yes, thank you. Good evening, thank you, Council President Clement, distinguished members of the Nelsonville City Council. Thank you for this opportunity to speak with you. My name is Trevor Martin. I'm the program coordinator with the League of Women Voters of Ohio. For over 100 years, the League has been a nonpartisan grassroots organization that believes voters should play a critical role in democracy, and that is why we advocate for fair redistricting at the state and local levels. Beginning in early 2021, I myself traveled throughout the state to inform and educate citizens about the congressional and state legislative redistricting processes. And I met with many diverse groups of Ohioans, from block clubs to neighborhood associations, government officials, churches, reporters, civic organizations. And in coordination with our larger coalition, I hosted dozens of trainings, both in person and online, teaching hundreds of Ohioans to use open source mapping software to read, analyze, and create proposed district maps of their own. Much of our redistricting work focuses on identifying communities of interest, which are groups of people who share common economic, environmental, social, and policy needs. It's a best practice to try to keep such communities together. And our community mapping program helped us understand how everyday Ohioans identify and define their communities, and therefore how they believe district lines should be drawn. More recently, I worked with our local league and our allies in the city of Cleveland to help read, analyze, edit, and submit proposed maps for their city council redistricting process, which just wrapped up earlier this month. And every testimony, whether it's state or local, we emphasize that the citizens deserve a transparent redistricting process that includes ample time for meaningful public input and feedback. Given that this is such a rare opportunity for fair, voter-focused wards, transparency and public input should not be limited, but instead encouraged and accommodated for. The people of Nelsonville want and deserve fair and accountable representation, which requires fair maps and a transparent public process for creating them. And then I've got some suggestions. I'll just hand those out to you. Some best practices that we've come across. But let me finish by just saying that the process of dividing a city into wards, as described in the statute, should be done with ample opportunity for citizen input, with full transparency, and with the goal of prioritizing what's best for voters. Providing for better transparency and more community input now will result in a better process with better outcomes later, ultimately making for a stronger and more representative government for the people of Nelsonville. You have a unique opportunity here to do what is best for your residents while showing the state of Ohio how a fair redistricting process works. Thank you again for taking the time to hear from us. We acknowledge and appreciate your work and the service to your community, and we understand the magnitude of the task before you. And we are here to help and to offer any assistance that we can provide to the council and the people of Nelsonville. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions?
I have a question. So basically, the way the wards are set up now for Nelsonville, they're basically no good, correct? Because of the time frame of them?
I would say that you would open yourself to litigation because the They're not just a little off, they're
Have you,
dramatically
okay.
off.
have you followed the papers in Nelsonville? We're not
Uh,
scared of litigation. I'm just laughing.
Yes, and being such, you know, I think that, you know, there would be scrutiny upon
Oh, I
any
know.
kind of final product
I
that
agree
would
with you.
come
I agree with
out
you.
of this process, and so, I would suggest,
I agree with
following the
Absolutely.
law is a good idea.
you. Absolutely. I appreciate it.
Now, is there a legal time frame before an election that we're supposed to have this set up?
Well, as Mr. Rowe had stated, you know, 150 days, you have to present this to the voters 150 days before the primary election. But I would like, and, you know, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not an attorney, but, you know, I've got some experience with the redistricting process, and I've done some reading of text, Ohio Revised Code and statute. It seems to me that going back to the original general plan of statutory government under Ohio Revised Code, you would kind of just go back to a blank slate, and in the code, you know, when a city first incorporates itself, they start with an at-large 7-member election, and then that council will have the responsibility and the duty to set wards within 90 days after they're seated. But I think, you know, and again, I would seek, you know, guidance from, you know, maybe somebody from the Secretary of State, but you know, if that is the case, you know, you have some time, I think, to really open this up to the people of Nelsonville and you know, kind of gather input to see how they would like these wards drawn in. And I don't think you yourselves have any authority, as Mr. Taylor said, to impose any kind of maps. But I think, you know, this transition process is, you know, will be long and arduous, and you know, the next council will have a lot of work on the table. And I think this is something that you could do to help move the process along. And the league here, our local league in Athens County and here in the state, I would be more than willing to help facilitate any kind of public forums or town halls in a nonpartisan, unbiased manner to kind of open this up to the community, show them where the population distribution is, that kind of dictates where lines in some manner need to be, you know, because obviously in you know, the high dense areas like maybe around the college or downtown, you know, it's all, as you said, it's all determined on population. But we can, you know, have these discussions with the people of Nelsonville about community, which neighborhoods should be kept together and represented by a shared council member, and maybe even propose a few maps to the next council that they could open up to general public within those 90 days to kind of speed that process along and make it as much as a transparent and open process as possible.
Quick question for you. How often should wards be reviewed to see if there needs to be adjustments made to the districting, if you will, if population changes and or for annexation, like if you were to annex, then, you know, how often should you review them?
Right, there's not really a review, but there's like kind of like triggers.
Okay.
So with the census, the you know, every census will be reviewed, but then there'll be those other triggers like annexation.
Okay.
Or if there's a change in the city charter, where there's, you know, up in Cleveland, you know, because of population loss, they had to shrink the city council 17 down to 12 or 13, I believe. And so those kind of significant statutory changes within the government will trigger those, and annexations. And there's also, within the code, the council can start a review of their own at any time.
So I have a question in general. If this issue had been part of the transition plan at the time that the ballot issue 23 had been put before the people, would that have potentially solved where we're at now? If that makes sense as a question, comment?
Maybe, yeah, I wouldn't want to
Yeah,
kind of like, step in anything, and I can't, and I don't know what the people of Nelsonville we're
Yeah, I
we're
understand
voting
that.
for, and
It was, that's what I say, it was more of a comment than really.
thank you.
I mean, you could get more detail,
My question is because the city of Nelsonville voted to go back to the statutory form of government that stated it's set down that we'd have people from each ward, one individual council from each ward elected. If we went as a, independent or at large, doesn't that take that statutory away? Because you can get 5 people from the same ward coming up to dictate the rest of it.
right, and that's something, it's another complexity, any kind of at-large election that would take place this year, those folks would have to understand that by law, once those wards are drawn and they're not in them, then they have to vacate. And so, and then maybe, again, kind of spitballing, but maybe this is another opportunity to kind of start the process early, so folks that are running in August, I believe, like, if you're at large, you could maybe they could kind of gauge where the chips will fall, once wards are drawn and put in place. And maybe that will encourage some folks to jump in but yes, that is.
Where my
That's
concern
something that will.
is individuals now that want to run on the ballot coming for November. They have to be registered with the Board of Elections come to 5 February for a partisan. If you want to run Republican, you want to run Democrat or anything, you have to be in by the 5th of February. Okay? But because the awards aren't set up at this time, legally, as far as we're saying, how can we fulfill that obligation?
Well, and Mr. Rhodes may correct me, but I believe, again, since you're still under the current charter, the election here in May and in November would be a nonpartisan race. And so that obligation, those wards, that partisan nature wouldn't take place until those wards, until January 1st of next year. And so once January 1st came and those folks would run again, they would have to declare a party or run independent, I suppose.
So I thought that's what I heard, so what you're saying is that everybody that declares in the primary this year would only declare as at large. And that way, the council in 2026 and the mayor, or whatever, would make the decisions as far as the wards and how everything's gonna lay out, get input from the citizens, find out where the populations are, and they could do all that. Is that what I hear you saying?
Yes.
Makes sense. Since we're already less than 150 days from the primary.
Right.
Right?
Have you dealt with, charter form of government going back to a statutory form of government before?
Now, I believe this is the first time.
Ever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
First time for everyone, yeah.
Yeah.
In my 42 years of municipal law experience, I've had.
Excuse me, can we get this fired up, Kevin? Could you?
I think you just minimized out of the Chrome tab.
It's working for you, John.
Yeah,
It's what?
It's on. It's just minimized.
Why are we looking at the moon?
Because that's the only one that's saying, number one.
It's a lot prettier.
Hey, I was looking at myself. I wanna see me.
No.
So I think that answered a lot of questions to me. And I appreciate it very much.
We have a question from, Mr. President. Mr. President, we have a question from,
Yes, citizens comment.
no, not the citizens comment, it's the reporter.
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Haley Hollinger. I'm with the Nelsonville Public Media. And Mr. Lawson, to kind of piggyback off of your question, I wanted to propose this mostly to you, Mr. Rowe, but to you as well. Mr. Taylor, you discussed the wording of issue 23 about going back to the way the government was. I guess so my question is legally and logistically, how does not following that, which is described in issue 23, not going back to words, how does that work legally? Does that pose any sort of risk? I know you kind of touched on that, but I kind of wanted to reword the question because of that specific wording in the issue.
Well, I guess if your question is, what are the chances of the city being involved in future litigation, that's about 100%. That's music to a lawyer's ears, I guess, but to no one else's.
Yeah, I can tell you who it is.
I think my primary concern is the one that you articulated, about if the wards aren't in compliance with the law, that's a surefire grounds for litigation, and of the most serious kind, because that's when you are diluting the vote of the voters, and that is not something that the law countenances. I would rather get sued on different grounds than that ground. I mean, I'm just the city attorney. I don't make decisions. I just carry the bucket of water.
He does it fine.
Does
good job. He puts up bottles.
That's just diluting votes and restricting, violating the right to vote is not something that the city is allowed to contemplate doing.
Sir, apologies, but I did want to reemphasize what you had brought up earlier, also about the additional recount that the city had taken. According to census, Nelsonville has 4,672. But with the recount, I believe that was 5,373. So it's a whole 700 votes we're talking about. I'm not sure where that data is. I'm sure it had to be turned into the Secretary of State, but any kind of mapping redraw, I would suggest that I'm not sure which number would be used, but that would need to be uploaded and tabulated into any kind of mapping software that used to. So, yes.
So basically, you're saying that this council has no authority whatsoever to get involved in drawing maps for wards of Nelsonville, is that correct?
Well, Ms. Sonic, may I kind of rephrase the question?
Okay,
What you're saying is the specific map of just adopting precincts has serious issues with it. And that, given those concerns, it should not be adopted just right now with limited public input. Well, essentially 1 day of public input. Is that kind of a fair summary?
Yes, very fair, and, you know, I may not, I can't say whether or not you have the authority to do so, but if you were to do so, I'm sure somebody would argue that you do not.
Yes. Yeah, that's true.
I wasn't trying to put you on the spot about it. No, I really wasn't. I was just trying to state that the council is trying, and we're running up against brick walls that no one understands.
I sympathize for you. It's like I said, this is a very unique situation, once in a lifetime, and we've never come across this, and so you folks and that next council have quite a job ahead of you. But if anything we could do, you know, to make that work a little lighter for you, we'd be happy to do so.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So,
Yeah.
it's a great man. Are there any citizens' comments? Go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you. I'm Debbie Schmieden from co-president of the League of Women Voters of Athens County, and I don't really have anything substantive particularly to add to what Mr. Martin said. He's way smarter than I am. But I do want to say that we, as a local chapter, are fiercely nonpartisan, along with the rest of the league world. We are also fiercely interested in standing by, we're a county league, we're fiercely interested in standing by you all and the voters of Nelsonville as you embark on the next step in this adventure. Just to point out that the state of Ohio, including Athens County, voted overwhelmingly in 2015 and 2018 to establish the standards for drawing political districts for fairness to every single voter. And what we would like to do as a chapter is to stand with you in the body that ultimately has the responsibility of drawing awards, to make sure that that body is very open to input from voters, the voters of Nelsonville, and to make sure that it's a very transparent process that gives itself, if not as long as it needs, at least a good chunk of time to hear from voters. Yes.
You used the word drawing political lines. I used the word and was told it was population lines, which is correct.
Well, not correct that I ever drew any lines, but it's based on, the standards are based on population and, as Mr. Martin said, communities of interest. And right. How you define communities of interest can happen locally, as you hear from citizens around the city.
Right.
But no, it does not have to do with registration by party or turnout by party or.
So it is population.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
There are state protocols for like proportionality, but you know, I would say Nelsonville, from what I've looked at in the brief time I've been able to look at Nelsonville data, like, you're pretty safe. Folks are pretty evenly split around here.
Yeah.
Good level field to play on, so,
But we,
I motion to table this.
What?
I motion to table this.
I just got one question is, so what you're saying for us to set up this, we should get an independent council with your help to help us set up the wards then, correct?
well, I don't think I'm not suggesting we set up anything, but we'd be more than willing to help open a dialogue with the folks of Nelsonville to kind of understand community and the process and, and what fair representation would look like. And, we could, open that up to, get feedback from
Well, that's-
residents
that's
to
what I'm
draw,
saying.
to help in the process of drawing this up. And we could sit down and, folks, back in my, teachings, like, I went to communities, smaller communities, and actually sat down with folks and was like, up this street and down this street, this is a school district here that cuts off. And so, we could have public forums and town halls and gather, public submitted maps and input and kind of build a map all together. Nelsonville can build a map together and kind of present that to the folks who do have the authority to impose maps and what they do with those, I guess, would be,
No, because what I'm saying is we as council, we basically can't sit down and say, okay, we're gonna go talk to everybody and then we're gonna draw it up. It would be better for us to have an independent committee or council to go through and do this, correct? And within the time frame to be able to get this done, coming up with the November election.
Well, it can't be done. It had to be done on December 7th, the plan. So it's a moot point at this point. So I think we need to move on here at this point because we are not able to accept any sort of maps. But Mr. President, point of order, Mr. Duffy, I know put a motion on the table, but we already have a motion and a second for adopting, and then we had discussion. So I think we need to vote up or down this legislation.
I have one more comment before we do that. So there's a group of people that doesn't want to see council take action on anything. But yet there's the same group of people that want us to take action when it fits their agenda. And that puts us in a tough spot. That's why I said last night, right now there's more questions than answers. And this is not going to be easy. And as you said, this has never been done before. So patience and work together is the only solution. So with that, Mr. Taylor, please continue.
No, that was it. I was just gonna call for a vote on it because at this point with the motion in a second, we need to vote it up or vote it down at this point.
Okay,
So what do we?
okay, let's just step back a second. Go ahead, Mr. Wilkie.
Just a initial parliamentary procedure. So motion to table is a subsidiary motion, so it takes precedence over the main motion. But there's been a motion, but there's not been a second. If there's not a second, then the motion table dies for lack of a second.
Okay. So if we got a second on the table,
The tabling motion would take precedence, although technically it would be a motion to postpone indefinitely.
okay, is it your legal opinion off the cuff here that this ordinance though would violate the charter if we passed it?
I don't think there's any language in the charter that gives council authority to.
Okay. So would it be better just to vote it up and, vote it down versus tabling it?
That's solely at the discretion of council.
Because tabling it, we can table it for indefinite.
We don't have a second on the table.
I'll second.
Okay.
I'll second the table.
There we go. Okay, so roll table. Yes. Clerk, call the roll on tabling this ordinance.
Mr. Flowers,
Yes.
Taylor,
Yes.
Mr. Lawson,
Yes.
Mr. Booth,
Yes.
Mr. Clement?
Yes.
Ms. Sonic?
Yes.
Mr. Duffy?
Yes.
So ordinance 425 has been tabled.
Thank you very much for all your input on that.
Thank you so
That
much.
was
Appreciate you, thank you.
Very good.
Very good information.
Thank you.
We'll be in touch.
And thank you for making the drive down.
Okay, ordinance 525, if someone would like to introduce it.
I'll introduce it.
An ordinance to place on the primary special election scheduled for May 6, 2025, a proposed amendment to the Nelsonville City Charter to give effect to the express will of the voters of Nelsonville and declaring an emergency. Whereas the 2025 municipal primary special election is scheduled for May 6, 2025. Whereas the deadline for certifying any local questions and issues for the May 6 primary special election to the Athens County Board of Elections is February 5th, 2025. Whereas the voters of the city of Nelsonville, via vote with a margin of approximately 70% to 30% on issue 23, have expressed their desire to change the form of government of the city of Nelsonville to have an elected mayor. Whereas the language of issue 23 did not include any provisions for authority to provide for a transition for the change in the form of government of the city of Nelsonville, thus rendering any transitional action taken by the city prior to the 2025 general municipal election subject to potential court challenges. Whereas the Ohio Constitution guarantees to the people of a municipality the right to choose their form of government. Whereas by resolution 2305, duly passed by the council of the city of Nelsonville, the city reaffirmed the city's longstanding commitment to respecting the right of the people of the city of Nelsonville to choose their form of government. Whereas the purpose of resolution 2305 was to clarify for the people of the city of Nelsonville the proper procedures to follow for the exercise of the people's right to choose the form of government for the city. Whereas the city is committed to upholding the rule of law and abiding by the dictates of the Ohio Constitution. Whereas the issue for the proper and lawful procedures for abolishing a municipal charter is presently pending before the Ohio Supreme Court in case number 2024-1737. Whereas if the Ohio Supreme Court reverses the Court of Appeals in case number 2024-1737, such reversals could call into question the entire validity of issue 23 and thereby prevent an attempt to give effect to the express will of the voters with respect to a change in the form of government of the city. Whereas council finds it appropriate to ensure the express will of the voters is given effect and the city of Nelsonville can lawfully establish and provide for a form of government with an elected mayor at the earliest time practicable. Whereas the appropriate means to ensure the express will of the voters is given effect is the procedure set forth in Article 18, Section 9 of the Ohio Constitution, Municipal Charter Amendment Procedure. Whereas the acting city manager, police chief, has proposed a charter amendment to give effect to the express will of the voters and to provide for an elected mayor form of government for the city. Whereas council finds it appropriate and expedient to certify the acting city manager, police chief proposal to the Athens County Board of Elections to place such proposal on the ballot for the voters. Now therefore be it ordained by the council of the city of Nelsonville, Athens County, Ohio as follows. Council reaffirms resolution 2305. The proposed charter amendment attached hereto as Exhibit A shall be forthwith submitted to the Athens County Board of Elections for inclusion on the ballot, submitted to the voters of the city of Nelsonville at the primary special election to be held May 6, 2025. The clerk of council is hereby directed and ordered to provide a certified copy of this ordinance with Exhibit A to the Athens County Board of Elections. The clerk shall furnish proof to council once such service has been completed. The city attorney is hereby directed and ordered to prepare language for the complete charter amendment in accordance with the proposal of the acting city manager, police chief. Such language, along with a summary of the proposal, shall be mailed to every registered voter in the city in accordance with the requirements of Article 18, Section 9 of the Ohio Constitution. Council hereby finds and determines that all formal actions taken relative to the adoption of this ordinance were taken in an open meeting of the Nelsonville City Council, and that all deliberations of council and of its committees, if any, which resulted in formal action, were taken in meetings open to the public in full compliance with applicable legal requirements. 5 members of council voting to dispense with the 2 readings of this ordinance. The rules are hereby suspended for this ordinance. And this ordinance is hereby enacted on first reading to ORC 731.15 and Nelsonville City Charter Sections 4.09 through 4.11. This ordinance is hereby passed as an emergency measure pursuant to ORC 731.30, Article 4, Section 4.09 through 4.11, as an emergency in the operation of the city government because the February 5th, 2025 deadline for the 2025 municipal primary election is imminent, and because it was necessary to give effect to the expressed will of the voters at the earliest time practicable, and is necessary for the immediate preservation of the public peace, health, safety, morals, or welfare of the city, and this ordinance shall be in full force and effect upon its adoption. Duly enacted by council on first reading the 28th day of January 2025.
Agreed.
Motion to suspend the rules.
So moved. Second.
Council discussion on suspension. Clerk call the roll.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Mr. Lawson?
Yes.
Mr. Booth?
Yes.
Mr. Clement?
Yes.
Ms. Sonic?
Yes,
Mr. Duffy?
Yes.
Mr. Flowers?
No.
Motion to adopt.
Second.
Council discussion on adoption.
Yes, Mr. President, I think this is the more appropriate, way to go that for this, change of government, in my opinion. And I know that Mr. Rove and, the attorney from Reminger also tried to assist, their attorney in forming this properly on, before the ballot initiative became, before it got on the ballot, to try to help clarify things. But I think this is the better way for a number of reasons, but the primary reason, in my opinion, is for you would maintain full rule, which you would lose if you went to the statutory form of government. So I personally think that this is the better alternative. I think that honestly, the charter still needs some amending just because it's 30 years old and hasn't been, reviewed and updated over time. So honestly, I think there's further updates that need to occur. But I think this is the far better way to accomplish the goal for the citizens based on the last election and what they're wanting. Yeah, those my opinion.
Please go ahead.
And I believe, the last years, it has been somewhat embarrassing at times. And I agree there needs to be a change. There's nobody disputing that. I don't think there's anybody disputing that on this council. So the problem with what happened with issue 23 is there was no plan for conversion. It was simply destroy the charter. Well, the question you need to ask yourself is why? Ask yourself why, really. And you can look this up. Anybody can look it up. It's very factual. There's individuals that have used the charter for their own benefit for years, to bully, to get advantage, to lean into. And then when that charter is no longer useful to them, what's the first thing you want to do? They want to get rid of it. It doesn't work for them. It's outlived its usefulness. So let's just tear it apart. If those individuals that want that so bad, they would be here. I don't even see them here. This was an advertised meeting. For 20 plus years, there's individuals that just beat it down, beat you with it. They used the charter to beat you. But now that the charter actually removed a prime source of it and removed him from it, and the city succeeded in 4 years, it went from almost broke to $1.2 million. The only change that was made was him not on council. All honesty, guys, I'm speaking from the heart. I love Nelsonville. I'm not from here. No, I am not from here. I'm a transplant, okay? I made this a choice to be here. And I believe in my heart, yes, there needs to be a change in the government. Because it's been embarrassing and it needs to change. You know, the whole thing at the beginning of the year with the 2 councils and the two city attorneys, who do you think that was organized by? The same gentleman that's suing the city right now. And everybody bought it.
Mr. Dumpy, let's not forget too that the charter, we utilized that charter for a number of years for our benefit, and then all of a sudden,
It was never allowed.
now it's unconstitutional.
Well, and I want to go back also, I'm sorry, I know I'm taking up some time, but I'm very passionate about this because of all the grief that has been caused in this city over this issue. And I agree, it needs to change to a mayor. We need a mayor, we need different council set up, go back to the wards and do this. But let's do it the right way. Let's do it the way that the city could continue to grow and not hurt its citizens. Because when it comes down to it, it's not about revenge. Nothing you do up here should be about revenge. And that's the thing that has got skewed in all the postings and in all the press. If you're doing this out of revenge, or you're doing this for personal gain, or you're doing this to be quote unquote a tyrant, then you've lost your mind, because there is no gain here. Only thing you do is lose family and friends. That's it. And I will tell you this, I regret, yeah, I'm telling something else. I'm on it, John. I'm on my soapbox. I will tell you this, the mistake that was made by this council was years ago, a petition was questioned by a few of us council members, and we should have proceeded that through, because that person who ran the Board of Elections was told by their attorney not to allow him on the ballot twice. It won't be in their notes, but they went against their attorney's advice and allowed him on the ballot because they didn't want to get sued. Exact words.
And there's a good chance they'll probably end up getting sued from this anyway.
Yes.
Well, can I say something?
You can, Johnny.
I didn't think you were gonna take a breath.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
The floor is yours. Mr.
Thank
Thomas.
you. 860 yes, 364 no. As I stated before, this vote is not for or against the form of government. It was voting against things like that's happening right here. It was voting against, and I said this last night, us. You could change the form of government to any form you want, but if the people aren't running that form of government, then you've got a bad government. So I've said it before, just like Tony said it. I love Nelsonville. I moved back here. I lived here for 33 years. I lived away for 31 years, and I'm back for another, hopefully, 30 years. But I know that's 90-some years. Yeah, I can add.
You're doing good.
But I do. I love this town, and I love what I see can happen to this town. But I can also see that what's going on with our council is causing a lot of dissension, a lot of name calling, a lot of accusing, and I don't think it's right. I think that vote, 860, 364, was not against or for a statutory form of government. It was to change the people on the council. It was.
Yeah, I'd like to respond to that, if I may.
You said something, Johnny. That was not-
So if the election was about the members of council, then why didn't some of those 860 people run against the members of the council instead of trying to totally change the government? Wouldn't that have been a simpler process and easier?
Oh, Twilight. I'm not upset.
So you don't have to respond to that. That's more of a comment. I always have a lot of questions. I'm accused of asking too many, but that seems like a pretty basic question.
Oh, I don't think so.
You don't think that's?
No, I don't
basically-
think so. I don't think so it is at all. I don't think anybody's cut out to run for a public office.
Out of 860 people?
I don't think they wanted to this kind of, banter back and forth and arguing and fighting. No, I don't think.
Okay, so we're
anybody
having
wants
a
that.
discussion, so,
Oh, this is the discussion?
well, this is council discussion, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
well, I mean, I'm discussing.
and so am I. We're not arguing, are we?
Well, then I'm telling you, no, I don't think that has anything to do with the subject. Just
Okay,
like you said,
so-
you want to represent the 364.
No, I said, I think those people need to be represented. I
They
didn't
were,
say
they
I
had a
want.
vote. They had a
Look
vote.
at line
Correct.
one. Line one says, now therefore be it ordained by the council of the city of Nelsonville, Athens County, Ohio, as follows.
You know,
Council reaffirms resolution 2305. I just wanted you to know that.
So
Line one.
to be clear, doesn't this reaffirm that there will be a mayor form of government with council folks, with the wards?
Yep.
And sets everything else in a plan that had not been set forward?
My point is, it'll be the same council that's
No, it
running.
won't.
No, it's
No,
not.
it won't
Oh,
be,
it
Johnny.
won't.
Calm down.
Oh, good lord.
Okay, so how do you figure that?
Why am I here?
Well, I don't know. You haven't been here for a while.
We can discuss that after the meeting.
So what makes you think that this council will still be here?
No one's gonna be there.
I'm not gonna be here.
Believe me, after this meeting, I'm
All
done.
right, you said it, now tell us why we're
Yeah.
gonna be here.
Well,
Take
we're
that to
gonna
the
be
bank.
here until the end of the year, right?
Right, and
that would
that's
happen
why
regardless.
we don't
Yes,
have
yeah.
a choice in it.
Right.
We do not have a choice in that.
All over.
Now, tell me why we're gonna be here. You
Because
said.
we're gonna be
it.
here
Tell
until
us.
the end of the year.
Oh, now you're changing.
Oh, yeah,
the
there you go.
tune.
No, I said we're
Now
gonna be
you're
here until the end of the
changing
year. I know there's gonna be a vote, Miss Sonic.
Okay,
I know that November is going to be a vote.
But you're implying that we're going to still run this council.
As
We're
you
gonna
all
run
can,
this.
as you all can see, I'm the odd man out with this
Oh, no, I
council.
don't think that's what I'm talking about.
you have the floor.
No,
But I agree with Mr. Duffy. You admitted something when you brought up that point about getting rid of us. It was that vote was about getting rid of us. It had nothing to do, it had nothing to do with becoming a mayor form of government. It was about getting rid of us. You admit that.
us.
It's nice of you to include yourself in that, but your text message of the group, the Gang of Nine, proves that you were not really including yourself in that.
Okay, all right,
Motion to
so where are we at? Any other comments on, from council?
There's been a motion,
There's been a second.
Okay, hold on, Mr. Rowe has the floor.
Okay. If I may, of course, it's always dangerous to give the floor to a lawyer. He'll talk your head off for an hour and then send you a bill.
You got 10 minutes.
We're good.
You can drag me out by my hair.
You don't have that much anymore. I was kind of hoping for a transplant.
So, as you know, this charter amendment was the proposal of the acting city manager. I did have a conversation with the acting city manager earlier today, and he wanted me to just relay the substance of the discussion that he and I had today. And it was whether the proposal should be amended to specifically impose on the city attorney the duty to transmit in 2 years to the Board of Elections a ballot measure to take this mayor's charter form and submit it to the voters to change it to a mayor statutory question. If that's done, I think the effect of that is actually to create the transition plan. Remember, last November, I did warn the council that if issue 23 is passed, that may wind up having the effect of necessarily triggering follow-up votes to carry it into effect. I think with that amendment to the proposal, I think that winds up having the effect of solving 95%. There's one looming problem, I'll get to that in a minute if I may, but 95% of the transitional problems, because it'll all be baked into the charter. And then there would just be in there an automatic trigger for the city attorney. So it doesn't, we don't have to rehash all of the complicated legal stuff over the summer and into the fall. Just impose on I guess it would be me, but impose on the city attorney the clear legal duty, no question, just do the duty. And put it before the voters, and then if the voters want to stick with this transition and make it permanent, they can. If they want to just then give effect to this final switch, the statutory form of government, they can do that. The benefit of that, recall, as I had told council, under Article 10.06 of the charter, technically if something was done under the charter procedures, it's subject to repeal and amendment by council. With this though, if that amendment's made, council has no way to stop it. It's just done. It's up to the voters. Now, voters can vote this down. The voters can vote it down in 2 years or whatever, but it's up to the voters. Remember, it's the voters and only the voters who have the right to choose the form of government. But with that amendment, I think it could wind up solving a lot of our problems. I mean, there's still a tremendous amount of work to do. The big problem is, will it cause confusion where there's a charter amendment on the primary ballot at the same time there are people who are running for statutory council members? That's a significant problem, and I don't want to minimize that. I do wonder if, no matter what, confusion's inevitable at this point. And the question is how to minimize the confusion, maximize certainty for the voters, and ensure that there is no, going forward, difficulties with giving the voters their opportunity to say their piece. And again, there's nothing, this can't stop, nothing council can do can stop the voters at any point from exercising their right under the law to change their form of government. There's nothing council can do. But what council can do with this amendment, and again, it's not my call, I'm just a lawyer. If council wants to put this before the voters or not put it before the voters, or with the amendment or without the amendment, that's council's choice under the law, ultimately subject to the vote of the voters at an election.
So I have a question, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, no.
Well, I think that first of all, I like the idea because of having it on the ballot in 2 years, because when they went from statutory form of government to the charter, it was 2 or 3 years, I think, was the transition plan. It didn't just happen, January 1, here you go. And of course, we brought up these questions before, and you brought up the concern about employees even being paid on January 1, 26. So I like that idea. The question I have is, would you put it on as an amendment now to this to be passed in the primary, or would you wait to see if this gets passed and let the next council, when Mayor Flowers is running the show, let him decide, in 2 years if they want to do it, let the new council do it? Because that's the question I have is like, do you wait now? Do you do it now in May, or do you wait until after to see if it gets adopted, yay or nay?
That's an excellent question. I'm going to answer it in a little bit of a roundabout way. I'm a lawyer, so there's no such thing as a straight answer.
Just send the bill to Waterford. 457.
So ordinarily, and I don't want to put words in the acting city manager's mouth, he was working on this, I believe, on fairly short notice, but I think he was planning on having the advisory commission vet a lot of this stuff. But of course, part of the problems are kind of running up against some election law deadlines. And if it's possible to get some input from the advisory commission before putting this before the voters, I think that would be an excellent idea. Again, it's not they're not boxed in, but just like, hey, is there something that they have some input on? The second point is, so if you look at Article 18, Section 8 and 9 of the Ohio Constitution, those are the two sections dealing with procedure for charter amendments. That actually requires council to take an action 60 days, not 90 days. So I'm thinking, because the Constitution recalls the higher law than mere statute, if council were to, adopt to send to the Board of Elections, this charter amendment, I think the 60-day deadline probably controls. That being said, I'd rather avoid additional legal questions, but I guess if there's one message that I've been conveying, is maybe that's impossible. But as you recall, council did instruct me, and this was several meetings ago, to give effect to the will of the voters as expressed in issue 23. I take that duty very seriously, and I have every intention of fulfilling that duty. I understand and appreciate these decisions are very difficult. I think council just at some point just needs to take the appropriate action. And remember, council is ultimately accountable to the voters. And the voters are the ones, again, because they are the ones who get to vote in the council. Council's just the servant of the people. Council's not to be anything but the servant of the people. And I think every endeavor needs to be made to accomplish that.
Yeah, I agree with you. And, there's something that no one took into account is, what about all the grants that we have been awarded? What about all the funding under a charter form of government? What happens to all that money? That's something that no one thought about. What happens? Will it go away? Does it still continue to come in?
Well, to Mr. Rhodes' point, though, this kind of is
First time thing.
chaotic, situation and very complex. And to be honest, that's right out of the playbook.
It is. Chaos and mayhem.
That's exactly what this was intended. I think personally, I think this is the best option for the city because I don't think that folks understand the importance of home rule either. Because if you lose home rule, you don't have a say. The local voters, as far as the people that live in this community, don't have a say in writing their own rules. They're going to be dictated from the state level. They're not going to be able to create those, create the legislation within their own community that allows them to govern the way they want to govern. They're going to be dictated on whatever the statute says. And that's straight from Gary Hunter. Gary Hunter was a huge proponent of home rule.
Yeah, he was. Because this issue was brought up before.
It was 2015. I believe.
So,
And
Okay.
any other council discussion?
Well, I got a question, but if we don't use it, basically, if we go into, and not pass this, give us the voters, with the new form of government that they want to set up, right now I'm hearing they're having a hard time finding people to run for the positions. What if they don't find enough positions to fill all the vacancies coming up? If we don't do nothing, what happens to the city?
So I think come January 1st, vacancies on council would have to be filled in accordance with the provisions of the revised code, which here's a complication because the ordinary rule is the central committee of the party of the person who created the vacancy makes those appointments. Well, there won't be anybody because the seat will be brand new and vacant because no one ran. I think maybe the best answer, and I apologize for not having a good answer on it, maybe the best answer would be you would treat it in accordance with appointments to a vacancy that had prior been filled by an independent, which I think goes back to the question we were talking about, the 7 at large, and then creating the wards. That's kind of all.
But my question is, okay, you're saying the 7 at large on council or whatever. What if there's only 3 people that get on the council.
So the Supreme Court's held under the statutory form of government that the requirements of a quorum for legislation does not apply to filling for vacancies. So those 3 members could then act to fill the vacancies.
Okay.
I think that's a pretty well established holding by the Supreme.
Okay, because we have a hard time getting in, like, it's Doug said, get people running throughout the city now. So many times we've had people unopposed and everything running for council. And because they're running unopposed, they're automatically into council. And if we only have a certain number of people that run in this election, and it doesn't fill all of them, then it doesn't matter the vote of the people, because they're automatically in if they vote for themselves. Because they'll have a majority of vote. Because there's no opposition to them. And it would just happen with this council so many times, is that an individual will run and they'll pick a side where there's no opposition to it, and they automatically get put in due to the fact that nobody ran against me, so I'm in, and I voted for me. What happens with that situation?
I'm not sure I know the answer to that question. Probably it would just be the 7 highest vote getters. If there's fewer than 7, then as long as they got 1 vote, they're in. If there's exactly 7, as long as each of them got 1 vote, they're in.
But that's what I'm saying, I mean, but you won't have a full council, and theoretically, nobody voted them in, but yet they'll be able to pick and choose who they wanted, correct?
I see what you're saying. So you're saying you're saying if someone only basically voted themselves in, and then you don't have a full council, now that person is appointing a person to fill a vacancy in a different ward where no one ran?
If the new council says, the new charter says that they'll have a council of 7. You have, yes, in the awards, 2 at large, and then a president, okay?
Yeah.
So if you only have 3 people that run for the positions, you don't have a full, and nobody runs against them, they're automatically in.
Right, I understand. So those 3 individuals then are appointing 4 more individuals that were not voted in.
Correct.
Correct. And potentially from even, I mean, are they picking, well, we wouldn't have wards technically, they'd all be at large, so yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So they could just pick and choose.
Correct.
Kind of like this council.
All I'm saying, so. Right, I'm done.
If I may,
Yes, Ms. Sonic, you have the floor.
something that no one has even thought about, you're making so much concern about the council. And you have a mayor, he is gonna make
Or
the
she.
decisions. I'm sorry,
Or
he or
she.
she. Anyway, that's what you're forgetting about. The mayor, he's not gonna be someone like now who has to answer to council. He's gonna make the decisions.
That's what we want.
One person.
Well, I think, Ms. Sonic, I think that's part of the desire is to be able to potentially have one individual that you can persuade or manipulate.
Okay, well, again, these are a lot of questions that are gonna have to be discussed coming down the road. So if there's no other council discussion, clerk call the roll on ordinance 525.
Mr. Lawson?
Yes.
Mr. Booth?
Yes.
Mr. Clement?
Yes.
Ms. Sonic?
Yes.
Mr. Duffy?
Yes.
Flowers?
No,
Mr. Taylor?
Yes. Ordinance 525 passes. I didn't think you could.
It wasn't advertised. So.
Yeah, it's on the agenda, so that's
I
why.
put it there since I wasn't sure if there was.
Yeah.
Okay,
No, it was not advertised. so-
okay, so with that, motion to adjourn.
So moved, second. Yes.
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 Yeah.